You know what time it is. Woo! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We're back, happy people. We're back. Ooh, hold on 1 second. Gotta put out my food for later. All right.
How we doing?
I hope everybody's having a wonderful day on my favorite day of the week. It is the 13th of March on a Wednesday, my favorite day of the week. A lot of people would be very adverse to the number 13. There's a lot of stereotypical superstitions seeing 13 as a bad omen or an ominous or unlucky number. I am not of that mind. I am not of that mind. I am not of that camp. 13 is a pretty awesome number. It's not my favorite. It's not. My favorite number is number 9. It goes 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 52, 27, and 29. Yeah, those are my favorite numbers. Yes, I am that odd that I have a set of favorite numbers. And I have my reasons for the different reasons as to why I love these numbers. I love the number 5 because the main cast of the Power Rangers in any season, with the exception of a few, there's always 5 Rangers. And then there's, of course, the 6th Ranger that shows up later on. I love the number 11 because in tarot, the Justice Arcana, which is a major arcana card, is number 11. And 11 is a 1111 is a popular time where people, wish for good fortune and good things. I love the number 52 because DC Comics has 52 different Earths. Well, now there's, in the DC New Frontier, they've gone back past the original concept of there being 52 Earths and being an infinitesimal amount of Earths in the DC Omniverse. So, yeah, I have reasons as to why. And number 9 is my top favorite number because it comes from one of my favorite animes of all time, which is Cyborg 009. Shoutouts to Shotaro Ishinomori. Gosh, lots of nostalgia this week. Lots of really good, inspiring nostalgia, to say the least. But you didn't come here to hear me blabber. You came here to hear a story. Goodness, I thought something had flicked out of my eye. Pardon me. All right. We are back. We're doing a pretty good job, y'all. We are getting through this story. There we go. And then I might as well go ahead and show this now. So the next installment that we're going to be reading is another book by Lloyd Alexander. This book is actually in my top 5 favorite novels of all time. The Remarkable Journey of Prince Jen. The Remarkable Journey of Prince Jen. So this is a Chinese mythological fantasy story. It's got great moral lessons. I love the structure of the novel. It's episodic. It's fun. It is very much so in the tone of a wusheng novel, just with a little less Actually, no, I take that back. There's a good amount of action that happens in that story. But it's not Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's more like if Journey to the West had a spinoff. Take that with however you will. Maybe that'll be a story we could read, maybe for the teenagers, not for the little kids, because it'll probably be a bit of higher elevated diction and a bit more complicated themes. I'll probably do that for my teenagers. Journey to the West, which, if you don't know what that is, Journey to the West is the inspiration as to where Dragon Ball comes from, if you're familiar with that anime. So yeah, let's go ahead and read. Chapter 16, The Enchanter. Like a weary child, the old man hunched over the book-strewn table, his head upon his arm. Across his bony shoulders he had flung a cloak. The fire still flickered in the hearth, but the chill of this winter sank into him more deeply than any other he could remember. At his feet, Henwin stirred restlessly and whimpered in a high, plaintive voice. Dalbin, who was never altogether asleep nor awake, reached down a frail hand and gently scratched her ear. The pig would not be calmed. Her pink snout twitched, she snorted and muttered unhappily and tried to hide her head in the folds of his robe. The enchanter at last roused himself.
"What is it, hen? Is our time upon us?"
He gave the pig a reassuring pat and rose stiffly from the wooden stool.
"It is a moment to pass. No more than that, whatever the outcome."
Without haste, he took up a long ashwood staff and, leaning on it, hobbled from the chamber. Henwin trotted at his heels. At the cottage door, he pulled the cloak tighter about him and stepped into the night. The moon was at its full, riding distant in a deep sky. Dalbin stood listening carefully. To another's ears, the little farm would have seemed silent as the moon itself, but the old enchanter, his brow furrowed, his eyes half closed, nodded his head.
"You are right, hen," he murmured. "I hear them now, but they are still far. What then?" he added with a wrinkled smile. "Must I wait long for them and freeze the little marrow left in my bones?"
Nevertheless, he did not return within the cottage, but moved a few paces across the dooryard. His eyes, which had been heavy with drowsiness, grew bright as ice crystals. He peered sharply past the leafless trees of the orchard, as though to see into the shadows intertwining the circling forest like black ivy tendrils. Henwin stayed behind, sitting uneasily on her haunches and watching the enchanter with much concern on her broad, bristly face.
"I should say there are 20 of them," Dalbin remarked, and then added wryly, "I do not know whether to be insulted or relieved. Only 20? It is a paltry number, yet more than that would be too cumbersome for the long journey, especially through the fighting in the valley of Yestrad. No, 20 would be deemed ample and well chosen."
For some time the old man stood quietly and patiently. At last, through the clear air, a faint sound of hoofbeats grew more insistent, then stopped as if the riders had dismounted and were walking their steeds. Against the dark tangle of trees where the forest rose at the edge of the stubble field, the darting shapes could have been no more than shadows cast by the bushes. Dalbin straightened, raised his head, and blew out his breath as gently as if he were puffing at thistledown. In an instant, a biting gale shrieked across the field. The farm was calm, but the wind ripped with the force of 1,000 swords into the forest, where the trees clashed and rattled. Horses whinnied, men shouted as branches suddenly lashed against them. The gale beat against the warriors who flung up their arms to shield themselves from it. Still, the war band pressed on, struggling through the wind-whipped forest and at last gaining the stubble field. At the onset of the gale, Henwin, squealing fearfully, had turned tail and dashed into the cottage. Dalbin raised a hand, and the wind died as quickly as it had risen. Frowning, the old man smote his staff on the frozen turf. Deep thunder muttered, the ground shuddered, and the field heaved like a restless sea. The warriors staggered and lost their footing, and among the attackers many fled to the safety of the forest, hastening to escape, fearful the earth itself might open and swallow them. The rest, urging each other on, drew their swords and stumbled across the field, racing toward the cottage. With some vexation, Dalbin thrust out his arm with fingers spread as though he were casting pebbles into a pond. From his hand a crimson flame sputtered, stretched like a fiery lash in blinding streaks across the black sky. The warriors cried out as ropes of crackling flame caught at them and twined about their arms and legs. The horses broke loose and galloped madly into the woods. The attackers threw down their weapons and tore frantically at their cloaks and jackets. Howling in pain and terror, the men reeled and plunged in full flight back to the forest. The flames vanished. Dalbin, about to turn away, glimpsed one figure which still pressed across the empty field. Alarmed, the old man gripped his staff and hobbled as quickly as he could into the cottage. The warrior was striding past the stables and into the dooryard. With footfalls pounding behind him, Dalbin hurried across the threshold. But the old man had no sooner gained the refuge of his chamber than the warrior burst through the doorway. Dalbin spun about to face his assailant.
"Beware!" cried the enchanter. "Beware! Take no step closer."
Dalbin had drawn himself up to his full height, his eyes flashed, and his voice rang with such a commanding tone that the warrior hesitated. The man's hood had fallen back, and the firelight played over the golden hair and proud features of Predri, son of Hwyl. Dalbin's eyes never faltered.
"I have long awaited you, King of the West Domains."
Predri made as if to take a step further. His hand dropped to the pommel of the naked sword at his belt, yet the old man's glance held him. You mistake my rank," Predri said mockingly. "Now I rule a larger realm, Predane itself."
"What then?" replied Dalbin, feigning surprise. "Is Gwydion of the House of Dawn no longer High King of Predane?"
Predri laughed harshly. "A king without a kingdom? A king in rags, hunted like a fox? Cardathel is fallen. The sons of Dawn are scattered to the wind. This you already know, though it seems the tidings have reached you swiftly."
"All tidings reach me swiftly," Dalbin said. "Swifter, perhaps, than they reach you."
"Do you boast of your powers?" Predri answered scornfully. "At the last, when you most needed them, they failed. Your spells did no more than frighten a handful of warriors. Does the crafty Dalbin take pride in putting curls to flight?"
"My spells are not meant to destroy, only to warn," Dalbin replied. "This is a place of danger to all who enter against my will. Your followers heeded my warning. Alas, Lord Predri, that you did not. These curls are wiser than their king, for it is not wisdom that a man should seek his own death."
"Again you are mistaken, wizard," Predri said. "It is your death I seek." Fun fact, children, in the world of fiction, let's say if you had a vampire trying to visit your house, the only way a vampire could ever get into your house is if you invite them over your threshold. It's a common fact in most older vampire lore. So it's kind of the same principle here, where if you enter into somebody's house uninvited, and forcibly so, bad things tend to follow. Pay very close attention, okay? Not to say that King Predri is a vampire, but it's the idea of coming into somebody's houses uninvited. There's consequences. Dalbin tugged at the wisps of his beard.
"What you may seek and what you may find are not always one, son of Hwyl," he said quietly. "Yes, you would take my life, that is no secret to me. Has Cardathel fallen? That victory is hollow so long as Dalbin stands, and so long as I live. Two strongholds have long stood against the Lord of Anuvin, a golden castle and a farmer's cottage. One lies in ruins, but the other is still a shield against evil, and a sword ever pointed at Aurorn's heart. The Death Lord knows this, and knows as well that he cannot enter here, nor can his huntsman Cauldron born. Thus have you come," Dalbin added, "to do your master's bidding."
A flash of anger spread over Predri's face. "I am my own master," he cried. "If power is given me to serve Predane, shall I fear to use it? I am no huntsman who kills for the joy of killing. I do what must be done and shrink not from it. My purpose is greater than the life of a man or 1,000 men, and if you must die, Dalbin, then so be it." Predri ripped the sword from his belt, and in a sudden movement struck at the enchanter. But Dalbin had taken a firmer grip on his staff and raised it against the blow. Predri's blade shattered upon the slender wood, and the shards fell ringing to the ground. Predri cast the broken hilt from him, yet it was not fear that filled his eyes, but scorn. "I have been warned of your powers, wizard. I chose to prove them for myself." Dalbin had not moved.
"Have you been truly warned?" "I think not. Had you been, you would not have dared to face me."
"Your strength is great, wizard," Predri said, "but not as great as your weakness. Your secret is known to me. Strive against me as you will. At the end of it, I who must conquer. Of all powers, one is forbidden you on pain of your own death. Are you master of winds? Can you make the earth tremble? This is useless toying. You cannot do what the lowest warrior can do. You cannot kill." From his cloak, Predery had drawn a short black dagger whose pommel bore the seal of Anuvan. "No such bane is laid upon me," he said. "As I have been warned, so have I been armed. This blade comes from the hand of Arorn himself. It can be wielded despite all your spells." A look of pity and deep sorrow had come over Dalbin's wrinkled face.
"Poor foolish man," he murmured. "It is true this weapon of Anuvan can take my life, and I cannot stay your hand. But you are as blind as the mole that toils in the earth. Ask now, Lord Predery, which the master and which the slave? Arorn has betrayed you."
"Yes, betrayed you," Dalbin said, his voice sharp and cold.
"You thought to make him serve you, yet all unwitting you have served him better than any of his hirelings. He sent you to slay me and gave you the means to do it. Indeed, perhaps you shall slay me, but it will be Arorn's triumph, not yours. Once you have done his bidding, you are a useless husk to the Lord of Anuvan. He knows full well that never will I let you depart alive from Caer Dallben. You are a dead man, Lord Predery, even as you stand here."
Predery raised the black dagger. "With words you seek to ward off your death."
"See from the window,"
Dalbin answered. As he spoke, a crimson glow poured through the casement. A broad belt of flames had sprung up to circle Caer Dallben. Predery faltered and stepped back.
"You have believed half-truths," Dalbin said. "No man has ever suffered death at my hands, but those who scorn my spells do so at their own peril. Slay me, Lord Predery, and the flames you will see will sweep over Caer Dallben in an instant. There is no escape from you."
Predery's golden features were drawn in a look of disbelief mingled with growing fear at the enchanter's words.
"You lie," he whispered hoarsely. "The flames will die even as you will die. That, Lord, you must prove for yourself."
"I have my proof," Predery cried. "Arorn will not destroy what he seeks most. There were 2 tasks. In all your wisdom you did not guess them. Your death was only one, the other to gain the Book of 3. Dalbin shook his head sadly and glanced at the heavy leather-bound tome.
"You have been doubly betrayed, then. This book will no more serve Arorn than it will serve any evil end, nor will it serve you, Lord Predery."
The force of the old man's voice was like a cold wind.
"You have steeped your hands in blood, and in your pride sought to pass judgment on your fellow men. Was it your concern to save Prydain? You chose an evil means to do it. Good cannot come from evil. You league yourself with Arorn for what you deem a noble cause. Now you are a prisoner of the very evil you hope to overcome. Prisoner and victim, for in the Book of 3 you are already marked for death."
Dalbin's eyes blazed, and the truth of his words seemed to grip Predery's throat. The king's face had turned ashen. With a cry, he flung away the dagger and clutched at the huge book. Desperately, his hands reached out as if they were rip it asunder.
"Touch it not!"
Dalbin commanded, but Predery had already seized it. As he did so, a blinding bolt of lightning sprang like a blazing tree from the ancient tome. Predery's death shriek rang through the chamber. Dalbin turned away and bowed his head as though some heavy grief had come upon him. Beyond the little farm, the circle of fire dwindled and faded in the quiet dawn. And that is where we will end for today. That's why you don't enter into people's houses uninvited. Because you never know if they've got some security measures up their sleeve. Dalbin, I'm gonna just say this. Dalbin had contingency plans more than Batman has contingency plans. What's a contingency plan? A contingency plan is a backup. It's a plan made in case something were to go wrong with plan A. They have a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. It's basically a counterattack to an action or a situation that you may not have been prepared for initially. However, that's why contingency plans exist, as a means of backup to cover the mistake that you may have made. So, go ahead and enjoy this sunny, sunny day. I'm gonna go and enjoy the rest of my day. Play the new Dragon Ball Z DLC on Dragon Ball Z Kakarot Goku's New Journey. Yeah. Love y'all. Bye-bye.